Shopping bags crash to the floor. Griffin's fiancée stands frozen in the doorway, staring at two 11-year-old twins she's never seen before. "You're what?" she whispers. Behind the children, their mother appears, the woman Griffin deleted from his life 11 years ago, after those two words. "I'm pregnant." Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. Zara Hayes wasn't supposed to be at that restaurant. She was filling in for her co-worker Melissa, who had called in sick, again, and the tips better be worth sacrificing her Saturday night. She balanced 3 plates on her left arm, 2 more in her right hand, weaving between tables like she'd been doing this for 6 years because she had. The restaurant was packed, every table full of people who wanted to be seen, who wore watches that cost more than her annual rent, who spoke in that particular tone of voice that said they'd never worried about money a single day in their lives. She was halfway to table 12 when she saw him. Tall, sharp jawline, perfectly tailored navy suit, dark hair styled in that effortlessly expensive way, and eyes that looked like they could calculate your net worth in 3 seconds. He was gesturing impatiently at his phone, then at his watch, clearly annoyed that someone had the audacity to keep him waiting. Griffin Pierce. She'd heard the name whispered by the other servers. CEO of Pierce Industries, 34 years old, self-made millionaire, notoriously difficult, never smiled, always complained. Great. Just great. Zara delivered the plates to table 12, forced her professional smile, and made her way over. "Good evening, sir. Can I start you off with something to drink while you wait for your party?" He didn't look up from his phone. "Scotch." "Neat. Expensive one." She blinked. "We have several premium options. Which would you prefer?" He finally glanced up, and for half a second their eyes met. His were gray, cold, assessing, the kind of eyes that looked through people rather than at them, whichever costs the most. "You're the expert, aren't you?" The dismissal in his tone made something hot flare in her chest, but she swallowed it down. She needed this job. "Of course. I'll bring that right out." She turned on her heel, that fake smile still plastered on her face until she reached the bar. "What a charming human being," she muttered to Marcus the bartender. "Let me guess. Griffin Pierce? How'd you know?" "He comes in twice a month. Tips exactly 15% to the cent. Never a penny more. Never smiles. Never says thank you." "Sounds about right." Zara watched Marcus pour the most expensive scotch they had, a $200 glass, and she carried it back carefully. She set it down in front of Griffin with a controlled gentleness. "Your scotch, sir. Anything else while you wait?" He picked up the glass, took a sip, and his face twisted in displeasure. "This isn't the Macallan 25. Zara felt her patience thinning. "I ordered the most expensive scotch we have, as you requested." He set the glass down with a sharp clink. "Then your most expensive scotch is mediocre. Bring me the Macallan. If you don't have it, send someone to get it." She took a slow breath through her nose. "Sir, I'm not sure we carry that specific brand, but I can check with the manager." "Do that. Quickly. My associate will be here soon, and I'd prefer not to be embarrassed by subpar service." Something inside her snapped. Not completely. Not enough to explode, but enough that a crack formed in her professional armor. "I'll check on that right away. And just so you know, subpar service usually comes from subpar manners." The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted them. His eyes snapped to her face, really looking at her for the first time. The temperature at the table seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Excuse me?" Zara's heart hammered, but she lifted her chin. She was already in it now. "I apologize if that was out of line. I'll speak to the manager about the scotch." She walked away before he could respond, her hands trembling slightly. Marcus looked at her with wide eyes as she approached. "Did you just sass Griffin Pierce?" "I think I just ended my career." 20 minutes later, the manager hadn't fired her. Griffin Pierce hadn't left. And somehow, impossibly, when his business associate finally arrived and they finished their meeting, Griffin left an envelope on the table. Inside was $500 cash and a note in sharp, precise handwriting. For someone brave enough to talk back. She stared at it for a full minute, not sure whether to be insulted or intrigued. The next Saturday, he was back. Same table, same expectant look, same expensive suit and charcoal this time. But when Zara approached with her shoulders squared for battle, he did something unexpected. He smiled. Small, barely there, but definitely a smile. "Good evening. I believe I owe you an apology for last week. I was unnecessarily rude." Zara nearly dropped her notepad. "I'm sorry. Did you just apologize?" His smile widened a fraction. "Don't get used to it. It happens approximately once every 5 years. She felt an unwilling smile tug at her own lips. "Well then, I'm honored to witness such a rare event. What can I get for you tonight?" he ordered, and this time he was almost pleasant. When she brought his food, he asked her name. "Zara. Zara Hayes." "Nice to meet you, Zara Hayes." "I'm Griffin." "I know who you are," she said before she could stop herself. "Everyone knows who you are. Should I be flattered or concerned? Probably both." That pulled a genuine laugh from him, low and surprised, like he hadn't expected it himself. Over the next 2 months, it became a pattern. Griffin came in every Saturday night, always requested Zara's section, always stayed longer than he needed to. Their conversations grew from polite exchanges to actual discussions. He told her about the pressure of running a company at 34, the exhaustion of being constantly on, the loneliness of never knowing who wanted him versus who wanted his money. She told him about her dreams of opening her own catering business someday, about putting herself through community college at night, about her mother who cleaned houses and taught her that dignity wasn't about your job title, but about how you treated people. "You're too smart to be here," he said one night, gesturing at the restaurant. "Not that there's anything wrong with being here. I just mean you should be running your own place." "Someday," she said, "when I save enough." "How much do you need?" She gave him a look. "I'm not asking you for money, Griffin. That's not what this is." "I know. I'm just curious. 30,000 to start. For equipment, permits, a small space." She shrugged. 5 years if I'm lucky and don't have any emergencies." He nodded slowly, something calculating in his expression that she couldn't quite read. The shift happened on a random Tuesday. Griffin texted her, something he'd started doing after she'd given him her number 3 weeks prior for purely practical reasons, if he was coming in late or changing his reservation. Except this time it said, "Not hungry for restaurant food. Want to try something different?" She stared at her phone. "Like what?" "Like I'll cook for you." "You cook?" "Don't sound so shocked." "I took a class once." "Once?" "Very confident." "My place." 7. "Only if you promise not to poison me." "No promises." His place turned out to be a penthouse that overlooked the entire city, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than a car, and a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. She stood in the doorway, feeling suddenly very aware of her jeans and sweater, very aware of the gap between his world and hers. "This is intimidating," she admitted. "Good," he said, taking her coat. "Then we're even. You intimidate me every time you call me out on my behavior." She laughed. "I find that hard to believe. You shouldn't." He moved to the kitchen, and she followed, watching as he pulled out ingredients with the careful precision of someone following a recipe like a legal document. "What are you making?" "Pasta. From scratch." She raised her eyebrows. "I'm impressed you're trying." "Impressed I'm trying? Watch and be amazed." It was a disaster. A beautiful, hilarious disaster. The dough was too sticky, then too dry. The sauce burned because he forgot to stir it. He cut his finger chopping basil and swore colorfully while she wrapped it in a paper towel, laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. "This is humiliating," he muttered. "This is humanizing," she corrected. "You're not perfect." It's refreshing. They ended up ordering pizza and eating it on the couch, her feet tucked under her. Him loosened his tie for the first time since she'd met him. They talked until 2 in the morning, about everything and nothing, about childhoods and fears and dreams and failures. And when he walked her to the door, he hesitated. "I like you, Zara. More than I've liked anyone in a very long time." She felt her heart speed up. "I like you too." But this, whatever this is, it's complicated. I know. Different worlds and all that. Not that. He ran a hand through his hair, looking almost vulnerable. I'm not good at relationships. I work constantly. I'm controlling. I have trust issues from being used too many times. I'm probably going to mess this up. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. Then let's mess it up together. He kissed her. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper. His hand cupping the back of her head, her fingers gripping his shirt. It felt like falling and flying at the same time, like standing at the edge of something terrifying and wonderful. They fell into it fast. Too fast, probably, but neither of them cared. Griffin was addictive in his contradictions, cold and calculating in business, but vulnerable with her, demanding and precise in his work, but playfully incompetent in normal life. He didn't know how to do laundry. He'd never been grocery shopping. He couldn't work a coffee maker that wasn't industrial grade. And somehow, watching this powerful man struggle with basic tasks made her fall for him even harder. She spent nights at his penthouse, mornings waking up to him already working, afternoons stolen between her shifts where he'd pick her up and take her somewhere new. He took her to art galleries, and she took him to her favorite food trucks. He bought her expensive gifts she insisted he return, and she cooked for him meals that he claimed were better than any restaurant. For 4 months, it was perfect. Too perfect. She should have known. The first crack appeared when she mentioned meeting his colleagues. Griffin's face had shuddered immediately. That's not a good idea. Why not? Because they don't need to know my personal business. I keep work and personal separate. She'd felt the sting of that but pushed it down. Okay. I understand. But when his mother came to town and he met her for dinner alone, when his brother visited and Griffin suddenly became unavailable for a week, when she mentioned him to her mother and he asked her not to tell people they were together yet, the cracks widened. "You're ashamed of me," she said one night, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "What?" "Number." "Then why does no one in your life know I exist? It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Griffin?" "Because from where I'm standing, I'm good enough to sleep with, but not good enough to be seen with. That's not fair. Neither is being kept secret." He'd looked away, jaw tight. "You don't understand the pressure, the expectations. If people know about us, they'll judge. They'll say things. Let them, unless you agree with them." She'd left that night, and he'd called her an hour later, apologizing, explaining, promising to do better. And he had for a while. He started holding her hand in public. He introduced her to his assistant. Small steps, but steps. She forgave him because she loved him. That was the truth she'd been avoiding. She loved him. Completely, terrifyingly, irreversibly. And one night, wrapped in his arms after they'd made love, she almost told him. The words were right there, pressing against her lips. But something held her back. Some instinct that said he wasn't ready to hear it, that saying it would shatter the careful balance they'd built. So she stayed quiet and held him tighter, memorizing the moment. 2 weeks later, she missed her period. At first, she didn't think much of it. Stress could do that. Long hours at the restaurant, emotional ups and downs with Griffin. Her body was probably just off schedule. But then came the nausea, the exhaustion, the way certain smells made her stomach turn. She bought the test on a Tuesday afternoon, her hands shaking in the pharmacy aisle. Took it in the restaurant bathroom during her break. Stared at the 2 pink lines for so long that Melissa had to knock on the door asking if she was okay. She wasn't okay. She was pregnant. 6 weeks, maybe 7. And the father was a man who'd never even said he loved her, who kept her separate from his real life, who panicked at the idea of commitment. She spent 3 days trying to figure out how to tell him. Rehearsed speeches in her head, imagined every possible reaction. Maybe he'd surprise her. Maybe he'd step up. Maybe this would be the thing that made him realize what they had was real. She called him on Friday night. "Can you come over? I need to talk to you about something." The silence on the other end stretched too long. "Is everything okay?" "Yes." "Number." I need to tell you something in person. More silence. Zara, if this is about us being more serious, I've told you I need time. It's not that. Please just come over. He arrived an hour later, still in his work clothes, tie loosened, looking tired and wary. She'd made tea, paced her small apartment, tried to calm the hurricane in her chest. Griffin sat on her couch, and she stood because she couldn't sit. Couldn't be still. Just say it, she told herself. Just tell him. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air like smoke. His face went blank. Completely, utterly blank. What? I'm pregnant. About 7 weeks. She watched his expression cycle through shock, disbelief, and then something worse. Something cold. How did this happen? We were careful. Not careful enough, apparently. She wrapped her arms around herself. I know this isn't planned. I know it's not what either of us expected, but it's happening, and I needed you to know. He stood up, pacing now, running his hands through his hair. This can't be happening. This can't. I can't do this. Griffin, I'm not asking you to. Not asking me to what? She took a breath. I'm not asking you to do anything you don't want to do. I just needed you to know. I thought you deserved to know. You thought I deserved to know that you're trying to trap me? Her heart stopped. What? Don't play innocent. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You get pregnant, lock me down, get access to my money. The words hit like physical blows. You think I did this on purpose? What else am I supposed to think? We've been together for months and suddenly, conveniently, you're pregnant. Tears burned her eyes. Get out. Zara, come on. You can't be naive enough to think this is, get out of my apartment right now. He stared at her, and she watched something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or just more anger. Fine, but don't expect anything from me. Don't call me. Don't show up at my office. We're done. He left, and she stood frozen in her living room, hand on her still flat stomach, tears streaming down her face. At 2 a.m, she checked her phone and saw that he'd blocked her number. She tried calling from a different phone and realized he'd deleted every trace of her contact information. She sent an email that bounced back, blocked. She went to his office building 3 days later, desperate and humiliated, only to be stopped by security who had clearly been instructed not to let her through. Please, she begged. I just need 5 minutes. I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Pierce was very clear. She'd never felt so small, so invisible, so utterly erased. Griffin Pierce had deleted her from his life with the same cold efficiency he probably used to fire employees. And she was left alone, 7 weeks pregnant, with a man who would never know his children. Except she was wrong about that last part. She just didn't know it yet. Zara worked at the restaurant until she was 5 months along and started showing too much to hide under loose shirts. She told her manager she was leaving to focus on family, took her savings, all $3,000 of it, and moved in with her mother. Mama didn't ask questions, just pulled her into a hug and said, "We'll figure it out, baby. We always do." The pregnancy was hard, not medically. She was healthy. The babies were healthy. Yes, plural, because of course it was twins. Because life apparently had a sense of humor, but emotionally, it was brutal. Every milestone, every doctor's appointment, every kick and flutter reminded her that Griffin was missing this, that he'd chosen to miss this. She cried a lot in the first few months. Then she got angry. Then finally she got determined. She was going to do this. With or without him. The twins, a boy and a girl, were born on a rainy October morning. She held them in her arms, these tiny perfect humans, and felt her heart expand in ways she didn't know were possible. The boy had Griffin's nose. The girl had his eyes, that same sharp gray. She named them Caleb and Sierra, and promised them silently that she would be enough. She would be both parents. She went back to work when they were 3 months old, waitressing at night while her mother watched the twins, sleeping 4 hours if she was lucky, running on coffee and sheer willpower. It was exhausting. It was impossible. But she did it. The years blurred together. First words, first steps, first days of school. Caleb was quiet and thoughtful, loved building things, spent hours with blocks and puzzles. Sierra was fierce and fearless, climbed everything, questioned everything, made Zara laugh even on the hardest days. They asked about their father sometimes. Where is he? Why isn't he here? Does he know about us? She told them the truth, a gentler version of it. Your father and I weren't able to be together, but that has nothing to do with how special you both are. Does he know we exist? Sierra asked when they were 7, her gray eyes too knowing. Zara had to look away. I told him, but he chose not to be part of our lives. That's his loss, Caleb said softly, and Zara had to leave the room to cry. She threw herself into building something better for them, worked 2 jobs, then 3, saved every penny, took online business classes during the hours between midnight and dawn, when the world was quiet, and slowly, painfully, she built her catering business from the ground up. Small events at first, birthday parties, office lunches. She worked out of her mother's kitchen, perfected recipes, built a reputation. By the time the twins were 9, she had a small commercial space and 3 employees. By the time they were 10, she was catering weddings. It still wasn't enough money. It was never quite enough money. But it was hers. She'd built it herself, and the twins were proud of her. She could see it in their faces when they helped her prep food on weekends, when they told their teachers what their mom did, when they hugged her goodnight. Griffin Pierce was a ghost she'd learned to live with. She didn't look him up online, didn't follow his company's news, didn't torture herself with what might have been. He'd made his choice. She'd made hers. For 11 years, that was enough. Until one Saturday afternoon when Sierra came running into the kitchen, breathless and excited, holding her phone. Mom, you need to see this. Zara wiped her hands on her apron, exhausted from catering a brunch event that morning. What is it, honey? It's for school. We have to do a family tree project. And I was searching for information about Dad because Mrs. Henderson said we should try to include both sides if we can, and look what I found. She thrust the phone at Zara, and the air left her lungs. It was a news article, dated 3 days ago. Griffin Pierce, CEO of Pierce Industries, announces engagement to socialite Amanda Whitmore. Ceremony planned for next month. There was a photo. Griffin, barely changed, maybe a few lines around his eyes, standing next to a tall blonde woman with a practiced smile. They looked perfect together, like a couple from a magazine, like everything Zara had never been good enough to be. Mom? Zara realized she'd been staring at the phone for too long. Are you okay? Fine. I'm fine. She handed the phone back with shaking hands. Did you find information for your project? Sierra bit her lip, looking uncertain. I found his address. He still lives in the same building, the same penthouse. Something cold settled in Zara's chest. How do you know that? I looked it up. There was an article about his penthouse being featured in some architecture magazine. Mom, I know you said he chose not to be part of our lives. But what if he doesn't remember? What if he forgot? What if we reminded him? Sierra, number. But Mom, maybe he's different now. Maybe if he saw us, he'd want to. Absolutely not. We are not showing up at his door. We are not disrupting his life. He made it very clear he wanted nothing to do with us. But that was 11 years ago. People change. Not that much. Zara's voice came out sharper than she intended. I'm sorry, but no, we're not doing this. Sierra's face fell. She nodded silently and left the kitchen, and Zara heard her bedroom door close with a quiet click. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Griffin getting married, starting a new life. Probably never thinking about the children he'd thrown away. It shouldn't hurt anymore. It had been 11 years. She'd built a whole life without him. But somehow, seeing that photo, knowing he was happy while she'd struggled every single day, it reopened wounds she thought had scarred over. The next morning was Sunday, her one day off. She woke late to find her mother making breakfast and the twins unusually quiet. "Where are Caleb and Sierra?" Mama's face was worried. "Baby, they left early. They left a note." Zara's blood went cold. She grabbed the note from the counter, recognized Sierra's handwriting immediately. "Mom, we're sorry, but we had to try. We need to know if he'll want us. We took the bus to his building. We'll be home soon. Love, Sierra and Caleb. Number. No. Zara was already grabbing her keys, her phone, her shoes. How long ago? Maybe 30 minutes. They said they looked up the bus route last night. Zara's hands shook as she dialed Sierra's phone. It rang and rang. No answer. She tried Caleb. Same thing, same. She was in her car, breaking every speed limit, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Those babies had no idea what they were walking into. No idea that Griffin Pierce didn't want them, had never wanted them, had erased their mother from his life like she was nothing. And now her children were going to knock on his door and face that rejection themselves. She couldn't let that happen. She couldn't let them feel what she'd felt. The city traffic was a nightmare. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every slow driver made her want to scream. She called their phones over and over. No answer, no answer, no answer. Finally, she pulled up to the building. That same gleaming tower with its doorman and its marble lobby and its air of wealth so thick you could choke on it. She abandoned her car in a loading zone, didn't care about tickets or towing, just ran. The doorman stepped forward. "Ma'am, can I help you?" "My children. Did 2 kids come through here, 11 years old?" "Twins?" He hesitated. "I'm calling Mr. Pierce right now. They said they were his children, but he doesn't have. Let me up. Now." "Ma'am, I can't just—" She was already at the elevator, but it required a key card. The doorman was on his phone, speaking in low, urgent tones. She could hear other voices, security probably, coming closer. Number. She'd been erased once. She wouldn't be erased again. "Please," she said, turning to the doorman with desperation in every word. "Please. I just need to get to my children." Before he could answer, the elevator dinged. The doors opened, and there, standing in the lobby of Griffin Pierce's building, were Caleb and Sierra. But they weren't alone. Behind them, looking pale and shocked and like he'd seen a ghost, was Griffin. His eyes locked on Zara's face. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Sierra stepped forward, her chin lifted in that fearless way she had. So much like her father, it made Zara's chest ache. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. "We found him." The silence in that lobby stretched like taffy, sticky and uncomfortable, and impossible to break. Zara's heart was doing something between racing and stopping completely. Griffin looked like he'd been struck by lightning, frozen mid-step, his face cycling through expressions faster than she could track. Shock, confusion, recognition, and then something that might have been horror or might have been regret. She couldn't tell which and didn't care to figure it out. Caleb and Sierra stood between them like little ambassadors from a world Griffin had pretended didn't exist. Sierra had her shoulders back, trying to look brave even though Zara could see her hands trembling. Caleb was quieter, watchful, his dark eyes moving between his mother and the stranger who was his father. "You need to come with me right now," Zara said, her voice low and controlled, addressing only her children. "We're leaving." "Mom, wait," Sierra started, but Zara cut her off with a look. Now, Griffin finally found his voice. It came out rough, like he hadn't used it in hours. Zara. Just her name. Just that one word. And it sent 11 years of buried pain shooting to the surface like a geyser. "Don't," she said, holding up one hand. "Don't say my name like you have any right to say my name." The doorman was still there, phone in hand, clearly unsure whether to call security or pretend he wasn't witnessing whatever family drama was unfolding in his lobby. Other residents were starting to notice, slowing their walks to the elevator, whispering. "Can we?" Griffin glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the audience. "Can we go somewhere private to talk about this?" "There's nothing to talk about." You made your choice 11 years ago. Mom, please. Caleb spoke for the first time, his voice so soft it almost broke her. We just wanted to meet him. Just once. And Zara saw it then. The thing she'd been terrified of since the moment she realized what they'd done. Hope. Her beautiful, brilliant, brave children had hope written all across their faces. Hope that this man would want them. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd get the father they'd been missing their whole lives. She wanted to rage. She wanted to grab them and run. She wanted to protect them from the inevitable disappointment. But they were looking at her with those eyes. Sierra's gray like Griffin's, Caleb's brown like hers, both of them silently begging. 5 minutes, she said finally, the words tasting like ash. 5 minutes. And then we're gone. Griffin nodded quickly. My apartment. Please. The elevator ride was the longest 90 seconds of Zara's life. Sierra stood close to her, suddenly less brave now that the reality was setting in. Caleb was studying Griffin with that analytical way he had, taking in every detail. And Griffin kept stealing glances at the twins like he couldn't quite believe they were real, like they might disappear if he looked away too long. The penthouse was exactly as she remembered. Same floor-to-ceiling windows, same minimalist furniture, same cold perfection. Except now there were signs of life. A woman's jacket draped over a chair, wedding magazines on the coffee table, a framed photo of Griffin and Amanda, that blonde woman from the article, smiling like people in love. Sierra saw it too. You're getting married. Griffin followed her gaze and something complicated crossed his face. Yes, I am. Zara felt sick. This was a mistake. This was such a mistake. We should go. Please, Griffin said, and the desperation in his voice stopped her. Please, just give me a minute to process this. Process this? Zara's voice rose despite her best efforts. You want a minute to process? I gave you the chance to process 11 years ago. You deleted my number. You had security throw me out of your building. You erased me like I was spam email. I know, he said quietly. I know I did. So what exactly do you need to process now? That I have children. 2 of them. Who are standing in my living room. Who exist. We've always existed, Sierra said, her voice sharp with hurt. Just because you didn't want to know about us doesn't mean we weren't real. Griffin flinched. I didn't know. He stopped, shook his head. That's not true. I did know. You told me. I didn't believe it was real. You thought Mom was lying, Caleb said flatly. I thought a lot of stupid things. Griffin looked at Zara, and she saw genuine anguish in his eyes. I was an idiot, a complete, absolute idiot. And I've spent 11 years trying not to think about that night, trying to convince myself I made the right choice. Did you? Sierra asked. Did you make the right choice? No, Griffin said immediately. God, no. But by the time I realized that, it was too late. You'd moved. Your number was disconnected. The restaurant said you'd quit. I looked for you. Zara laughed, sharp and bitter. You looked for me? When? After what? A year? 2? When your conscience finally caught up? 6 months, he said quietly. I looked 6 months later. After I fired my therapist for telling me I was self-sabotaging. After my mother asked me why I looked miserable all the time. After I realized I'd thrown away the only real relationship I'd ever had because I was too terrified and too proud and too convinced everyone wanted something from me. 6 months too late. I know. The apartment fell silent except for the sound of the city far below. Zara could feel the twins watching her, could feel the weight of their unspoken questions. What happens now? Can we get to know him? Will he want us? Tell me about them, Griffin said suddenly. Please, tell me everything. Zara wanted to refuse, wanted to protect her children from his sudden interest, from the inevitable moment when he'd get bored or scared, or realize that parenting was hard and inconvenient. But then Caleb stepped forward, making the choice for her. I'm Caleb, he said, extending his hand formally, so much like Griffin it was uncanny. I'm 11. I like math and building things and dinosaurs. This is my sister Sierra. She's 11 too, obviously, and she likes soccer and arguing and proving people wrong. Hey, Sierra protested, but she was almost smiling. Griffin shook Caleb's hand, his grip gentle, his eyes suspiciously bright. It's nice to meet you both. He paused. I'm Griffin. But I guess you already know that. We know a lot about you, Sierra said. We researched you. You run Pierce Industries. You started it when you were 27. You're worth approximately $400 million. You donate to children's hospitals, but you never do publicity about it. You haven't dated anyone seriously until Amanda Whitmore. You like scotch, but you're terrible at cooking. You once cut your finger making pasta. Griffin's eyes snapped to Zara's face. I told them some stories, she admitted. Before I knew better. Before I learned to stop talking about you. You told them about the pasta. It was a memorable disaster. Something passed between them then. A flicker of the connection they'd had. The ease. The understanding. And Zara hated herself for still feeling it. For the way her heart stuttered when he looked at her like that. The door to the penthouse opened suddenly, and a woman's voice called out cheerfully. Griffin, darling, I'm back early. The caterer confirmed the menu. And, oh. Amanda Whitmore stood in the entryway, arms full of shopping bags, perfectly styled blonde hair, designer outfit, looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion spread. Her eyes moved from Griffin to Zara to the twins and back again. Her smile faltered. Who are these people? Amanda, Griffin said, and Zara heard the exhaustion in his voice. This is Zara. And these are... He stopped, seemed to gather himself. These are my children. Caleb and Sierra. The bags dropped. 2 of them hit the floor with expensive thuds. Your what? My children. They came here today. I didn't know they were coming. I haven't seen Zara in 11 years. This is... He ran a hand through his hair. This is complicated. Amanda's face went through its own series of emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, and then something calculated and cold. You have children. Children you never mentioned. Children who apparently just show up at our home. It's not like that, Griffin started. Then what is it like? Amanda's voice was rising now. Because from where I'm standing, you've been hiding an entire secret family. There was no family, Zara cut in, unable to stay quiet. He didn't want them. He told me to never contact him. He blocked my number and threw me out of his building. We are not a secret family. We're the mistake he tried to erase. Mom, Sierra whispered, touching her arm. It's true, Zara said, not taking her eyes off Amanda. He made it very clear he wanted nothing to do with me or with them. So don't act like he's been secretly playing father all these years. He hasn't been anything to them. Amanda turned to Griffin. Is this true? Yes, he said quietly. All of it. You told a pregnant woman to never contact you? I was scared. I was stupid. I convinced myself she was trying to trap me, that it wasn't real, that I couldn't trust her. He looked at Zara. I was wrong about all of it. Amanda stared at him for a long moment, then grabbed her purse from the counter. I need some air. We'll talk about this later. Much later. She left, and the slam of the door echoed through the penthouse. Well, Sierra said into the silence. That went great. Despite everything, Zara almost laughed. We're leaving too. You've met them. You know they exist. That's enough. It's not enough, Griffin said. Please. Let me try to make this right. You can't make this right. You can't get back 11 years. You can't undo the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering how I'd pay the bills. You can't undo the times they asked about you and I had to see the hurt in their faces. You can't undo any of it. I know. But maybe I can be here for the future. Why? Why now? Because they showed up? Because you feel guilty? Yes. He said it so simply. Because I feel guilty. Because I was a coward. Because every relationship I've had since you has felt empty. Because I convinced myself I did the right thing. and I've been miserable ever since. And because, he looked at Caleb and Sierra, because they deserve better than a father who runs away. Zara felt tears burning her eyes and forced them back. They do deserve better, which is why I've been both parents for 11 years. They're fine. We're fine. We don't need you showing up now with your guilt and your good intentions. Mom, Caleb said softly. Can I talk to you? Alone? Zara followed him to the far side of the massive living room near the windows that overlooked the city. Sierra came too, and they huddled together like they had so many times before, the three of them against the world. I know you're angry, Caleb said, and you should be. He was terrible to you. The worst, Sierra added. But, Caleb continued, maybe we could give him a chance. Not for him. For us. Just to see if he could be what we've been missing. And what if he breaks your hearts? Zara whispered. What if he tries for a while and then decides it's too hard? What if you get attached and he leaves? Then we'll deal with it, Sierra said. Together, like we always do. But Mom, we've spent our whole lives wondering. Can't we try? Zara looked at their faces, at the hope and fear and desperate wanting written across every feature, and felt something crack inside her. They needed this. Maybe not for the right reasons. Maybe it would end badly. But they needed to try. Okay, she said finally. But we do this on my terms. We take this slow. He doesn't get to just jump into your lives because he suddenly feels bad. He has to earn it. Fair, Caleb agreed. Very fair, Sierra added. They walked back to where Griffin stood by the couch, looking like he was waiting for a verdict that would determine his entire future. The twins want to give you a chance, Zara said. I don't. But I'm not going to stand in their way. So here are the rules. You don't get unsupervised time with them until you've proven you're reliable. You don't make promises you can't keep. You don't treat them like an obligation or a guilty chore. And the absolute second you hurt them, we're done. Forever. No second chances. I understand. And one more thing. You don't get to be in their lives without being in mine. 11 years ago, not romantically, that ship sailed and sank. But if you're going to be their father, you deal with me too. Co-parenting, communication, respect. Think you can manage that? Yes, I can manage that. Then we'll start with supervised visits. Once a week. We'll see how it goes from there. Over the next 3 months, Griffin showed up. Every single week, like clockwork, he arrived at the small house Zara had bought 5 years ago with her catering business profits. He brought gifts at first, expensive things that made the twins' eyes go wide, tablets and designer clothes and concert tickets. Zara shut that down immediately. Their love isn't for sale, she told him after the 3rd week of extravagant presents. If you want to impress them, show up. Listen. Remember what they tell you. That's what matters. So he stopped bringing things and started bringing himself. He came to Caleb's robotics competition and sat in the bleachers for 6 hours watching kids program machines. He went to Sierra's soccer games and learned the rules so he could actually understand what was happening. He helped with homework, even though his calculus was rusty, and Sierra delighted in correcting him. He asked questions. He listened to their stories about school, about their friends, about the lives they'd lived without him. And slowly, carefully, like building something fragile from broken pieces, they started to become something like a family. It wasn't easy. There were hard moments. Like when Sierra asked why he hadn't wanted them, and he had to explain, haltingly, about his own father who'd never been around, about learning that love was conditional, about being so scared of being trapped that he'd pushed away the only real thing he'd ever had. Or when Caleb asked about Amanda, and Griffin had to admit the engagement was off. She couldn't get past the fact that I'd hidden something so important, he explained. And honestly, I think I'd been using her as a shield, a way to avoid dealing with what I'd done to your mother. Do you still love Mom? Sierra asked bluntly, and Zara, who'd been in the kitchen making snacks, froze. Griffin was quiet for a long moment. I never stopped. But that doesn't matter because she doesn't love me. And I don't deserve her anyway. Zara's hands shook as she cut sandwiches. For her part, she maintained careful distance. She was civil, respectful even, but cold. She didn't laugh at his jokes. She didn't linger during pickups and drop-offs. She treated him like a coworker, professional and detached. But it was getting harder, because he'd changed. Or maybe he'd finally become the person he was supposed to be all along. He was patient with the twins. He admitted when he was wrong. He asked her advice on parenting decisions instead of assuming he knew best. He showed up to her catering events when she needed emergency help, washing dishes without complaint, never once mentioning that he was a CEO doing menial labor. And he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching, with such profound regret and longing that it made her chest ache. 5 months in, Sierra got sick. Not seriously, just a bad flu. But she spiked a fever of 103 in the middle of the night, and Zara found herself in the emergency room at 2 in the morning, exhausted and scared. Her phone buzzed. "Griffin, can I come?" I know it's not my day, but Sierra texted me that she was scared. Zara stared at the message. She could say no. She should say no. But her daughter had reached out to him, and that meant something. St. Mary's Hospital, room 217. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair messy, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. He sat on the other side of Sierra's bed and held her hand while they waited for test results. "I'm scared," Sierra whispered. "What if it's something bad?" "It's not," Griffin said with certainty. "You're too stubborn for anything bad to stick." That made her smile weakly. "You sound like Mom. Your mom is usually right. High praise from you." Griffin glanced at Zara across the bed, and something passed between them. An understanding. A truce. Maybe more. The fever broke by morning. Zara dozed in the uncomfortable hospital chair, and when she woke, Griffin was still there, also asleep. His head tilted back at an uncomfortable angle, his hand still holding Sierra's. Something shifted in her chest. Some ancient defense mechanism finally cracking. 2 weeks later, Caleb's science fair was on the same night as Zara's biggest catering gig of the year, a wedding for 200 people. She couldn't be in both places, and the realization made her want to cry. "I'll go," Griffin said immediately when she mentioned it. "I'll take pictures, video, everything. You won't miss a moment, but you have that investor meeting. I'll reschedule." "Griffin, that meeting is worth millions. Caleb's science fair is worth more." He went. He sent her photos every 15 minutes, videos of Caleb explaining his volcano project with shy pride, pictures of the blue ribbon he won. And when Zara got home exhausted at 11 that night, she found Griffin still there, playing a board game with both twins, while her mother watched with a knowing smile. "You didn't have to stay," Zara said. "I wanted to." He looked up at her. "Is that okay?" "Yeah, it's okay." That night after the twins were asleep, she found him on the porch, looking out at her small backyard with its swing set and vegetable garden and nothing like the view from his penthouse. "Thank you," she said, sitting down next to him. "For today. For every day lately, actually. You've been good for them." "I'm trying." "I can see that." They sat in silence for a moment, and then Griffin spoke quietly. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed any chance we had. But I need you to know that not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted what I did. Not one day." Zara felt tears prick her eyes. "You really hurt me, Griffin. You made me feel worthless, like I was nothing. You were everything. That's what terrified me. You were real, and I didn't know how to handle real. I only knew how to handle transactions and contracts and things I could control. But you wanted actual partnership, actual vulnerability, and I panicked. You called me a liar. You said I was trying to trap you. I know." His voice cracked. "I know, and it's the worst thing I've ever done. I see you now, working 3 jobs to build something for them, raising 2 incredible kids alone, being stronger than anyone I've ever met, and I realize what an absolute fool I was. You weren't trapping me. You were offering me everything I'd ever wanted and was too broken to accept." Zara wiped her eyes. "I don't know how to forgive you. I'm not asking you to. I needed you to know that I see you now, that I see what I lost, that if I could go back. He stopped, took a shaky breath. I would do everything differently, but you can't go back. I can't. So all I can do is try to be worth your trust now, for them. And maybe, someday, for you too. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw not the arrogant CEO who'd broken her heart, but a man who'd broken himself too, who'd spent 11 years living with his own mistakes, who was trying desperately to build something real from the wreckage. It's not going to be easy, she said softly. I'm not the same person I was. I don't trust easily anymore, and I won't risk the twins getting hurt. I know. I'll spend the rest of my life earning their trust. And yours, if you'll let me try. She didn't answer, just sat with him in the quiet, in the space between what was and what might be. The breakthrough came 6 months after that first day in Griffin's lobby, Caleb's birthday. He'd wanted a simple party, just family and a few friends, cake and pizza and video games in their basement. But when the day came, he pulled Zara aside with that serious look he got when something was really important. Mom, can Griffin come? Not as a guest. As family? Are you sure? He's been showing up for 8 months. He hasn't missed a single visit. He came to the hospital when Sierra was sick. He rescheduled a multi-million-dollar meeting for my science fair. I think he's trying to be our dad. And you want that? Caleb nodded, suddenly looking younger than his almost 12 years. Yeah, I do. Sierra does too. We talked about it. Then yes, he can come as family, as. Griffin arrived an hour before the party, arms full of party supplies because Zara had mentioned she was running behind. He helped blow up balloons, hung streamers, set up chairs, never once acting like it was beneath him. When the kids started arriving, he was the one managing the games, the one making sure everyone felt included, the one who ended up with cake in his hair because Sierra's friend thought it would be funny. And at the end of the night, when the guests had left and the twins were opening presents, Caleb turned to Griffin with something wrapped in newspaper. This is for you, he said shyly. Griffin carefully unwrapped it to find a framed picture, one Caleb had clearly made himself. It was the three of them, Griffin, Caleb, and Sierra, at the robotics competition, captured by Zara from across the gym. They were laughing about something, heads close together, looking like they'd known each other forever. At the bottom, in Caleb's careful handwriting, it said, Our dad. Griffin's face crumpled. He pulled Caleb into a hug, then Sierra, both twins wrapped in his arms, and when he looked up at Zara, his eyes were streaming with tears. Thank you, he mouthed. She nodded, her own throat too tight to speak. Later, after the twins were in bed riding their birthday sugar high into eventual sleep, Griffin found Zara in the kitchen finishing the dishes. Can I help? You've done enough today. He picked up a towel anyway, started drying. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and then he spoke. I got Caleb's present. I saw. It's the best gift I've ever received. She smiled despite herself. Better than the Rolex your business partner gave you last year, 1,000,000 times better. He set down the towel, turned to face her. Zara, I know I have no right to ask this, but I need to know. Is there any chance, any possibility, that someday you might forgive me? Not for my sake, for theirs. Because watching you look at me like I'm someone who hurt you, it's killing me. And I think it's confusing for them. She turned off the water, dried her hands slowly, buying time to think. You want to know if I forgive you? Yes. I forgive you, she said quietly. I forgave you months ago, actually. Watching you show up for them, seeing you try so hard, realizing you genuinely changed, I let go of the anger. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Griffin. It doesn't mean we go back to what we were. What if I don't want to go back? What if I want something new, something better? Her heart started pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying I never stopped loving you. I'm saying these past 8 months, getting to see you as a mother, as a business owner, as this incredible strong person who built a whole life out of nothing. I've fallen in love with you all over again. Deeper this time. More real. Griffin, don't. Why not? Because I can't handle you breaking my heart again. Once was enough. I won't. I swear to you, I won't. You can't promise that. Then let me try to show you. He stepped closer. Let me take you to dinner. Just us. Let me prove that I'm not the same terrified man who ran away. Let me prove that I see you, all of you, and I'm not going anywhere. Zara looked up at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, the hope, the fear. She thought about the past 8 months watching him transform from a stranger to a father, seeing him humble himself over and over, catching him looking at her like she was sunlight. One dinner, she said finally. One chance. And if you screw this up, if you hurt me or them, there won't be a third time. I understand. He smiled, soft and genuine. Thank you for the chance. The date was the following Saturday. Griffin picked her up, and she barely recognized him in jeans and a simple button-down. No fancy suit, no CEO mask. He took her to a small Italian restaurant. Nothing fancy. The kind of place she would have chosen herself. I remember, he said as they sat down. You always said the best food came from places where the grandmother was still cooking in the back. You remember that? I remember everything. Every conversation, every laugh, every moment I was too stupid to appreciate at the time. They talked for hours, not about the twins, not about the past, but about themselves, about who they'd become in 11 years apart, about dreams and regrets and hopes for the future. And somewhere between the appetizer and dessert, Zara realized she was laughing, really laughing, the way she used to before everything fell apart. I missed this, she admitted. I missed talking to you. I missed you. All of you. Your laugh, your sarcasm, the way you call me out when I'm being an idiot, which is often the way you make everything better just by being in the room. Griffin, we can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened. I know. So let's start new. Let me court you properly this time. Let me show you I've changed. Let me earn the privilege of being in your life, not just as the father of your children, but as someone who loves you and wants to build a future with you. She wanted to say no, wanted to protect herself, but looking at him across the table, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, feeling the flutter in her chest that had never quite died, she couldn't. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. It was slow, careful. Griffin took her on dates, simple ones, coffee shops and parks and cooking disasters in her kitchen that made the twins laugh. He brought her flowers from the farmer's market. Not expensive bouquets, but wildflowers, he said, reminded him of her. Chaotic and beautiful and real. He learned her new rhythms, her business schedule, her exhaustion after long catering events, and showed up with takeout and offers to watch the twins so she could sleep. And bit by bit, date by date, conversation by conversation, she felt her walls coming down. The twins noticed, of course. They weren't blind. Sierra cornered her one evening while Griffin was helping Caleb with a model airplane in the living room. You like him again, she said. Not a question, an observation. I don't know what I feel, Zara admitted. It's complicated. Life's complicated. Doesn't mean it's not worth it. Sierra paused. Mom, I know he hurt you really badly, and if you can't get past that, I understand. But I've never seen you smile as much as you have lately. And I think maybe he deserves a second chance. People change. When did you get so wise? I'm 11. I know everything. Zara laughed and pulled her daughter into a hug, grateful beyond words for these two humans she'd somehow managed to raise right despite everything. 4 months into their new relationship, Griffin showed up at Zara's house in the middle of the day, unannounced, looking nervous. Is everything okay? She asked, immediately worried. Yes. Number, I need to show you something. Can you come with me? Just for an hour? The twins are at school. I have a prep shift for tomorrow's event. This is important. Please. Something in his voice made her agree. She grabbed her jacket and followed him to his car, more curious than concerned now. He drove for 20 minutes to a neighborhood she didn't recognize. Middle class, Tree-lined streets, kids playing in yards. He pulled up in front of a house, modest but beautiful, with a big backyard and a porch swing and flower boxes in the windows. "What are we doing here?" she asked. "Come inside." He led her through the front door into a space that was empty, but full of potential. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, big windows that let in floods of natural light. She walked through room after room, confused, until they reached the kitchen. It was massive. Professional-grade appliances, double ovens, huge prep space, industrial refrigerator, a kitchen built for someone who cooked for a living. "Griffin, what is this? It's yours, if you want it." He turned to face her. "I know you've been looking at commercial kitchen spaces for your catering business. I know the rent is astronomical, and you're trying to save up. So I bought this. The kitchen is for your business. But there's also space upstairs. 4 bedrooms, a huge backyard for the twins. Enough room for all of us if that's something you'd ever want." Her heart was pounding. "You bought me a house? Not just a house. A home. For your business. For your family. And maybe, if you'll have me, for us. I'm not asking you to move in tomorrow. I'm not asking you to marry me yet. I'm just asking you to see that I'm serious, that I'm building a future I hope includes you. Griffin, this is too much. It's not enough. Nothing will ever be enough to make up for what I did. But I want to spend my life trying. I want to support your dreams the way you've supported mine by giving me a second chance with the twins. I want to build something real with you." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll consider the possibility of us, really us, together." She looked around the kitchen, at the space she could fill with her equipment, her creativity, her passion. She thought about the twins having their own rooms, a big yard to play in. She thought about Griffin being part of their everyday life, not just scheduled visits but actual family. "I'll think about it," she whispered. "That's all I'm asking." But 3 days later, she didn't need to think anymore. She showed up at Griffin's office, walked past his stunned assistant, and found him in his corner office staring at his computer. "Yes," she said. He looked up confused. "Yes? Yes to the house. Yes to trying to build something together. Yes to seeing if we can be a real family. But," she held up a finger, "we do this my way. Slow. Honest. If you hurt me again, if you hurt them, I'm done. No third chances." Griffin was around his desk in seconds, pulling her into his arms. "I won't. I swear to you, I won't. I love you, Zara. I've loved you for 11 years, even when I was too stupid to admit it. I love our children. I love the family we're building, and I'm never letting go again." She kissed him then, and it felt like coming home and starting new all at the same time. They moved into the house 6 weeks later. The twins were ecstatic, running through rooms, claiming spaces, planning where to put things, already making it theirs. Griffin moved in gradually, respectful of boundaries, sleeping in the guest room at first, even though Zara eventually, shyly, asked him to share hers. It wasn't perfect. There were adjustments, arguments, moments of tension as they figured out how to blend their lives. But there was also laughter. So much laughter. And family dinners, and movie nights, and ordinary, beautiful domestic chaos that Griffin had never known he wanted until he had it. A year after that first dinner date, Griffin took them all back to that Italian restaurant, the grandmother cooking place. He'd arranged for a private room, and the twins were suspicious immediately. "What's going on?" Sierra demanded. "You're being weird," Caleb added. Griffin looked at Zara, and she smiled, because she knew. He'd asked her permission first this time, had planned it together with her, had done everything right. "So," Griffin said, looking at the twins, "I have a question for all 3 of you. These past 2 years have been the best of my life. Getting to know you both, falling in love with your mother again, building our family. It's everything I didn't know I was missing, and I don't ever want it to end." He got down on one knee and Sierra gasped. Caleb's eyes went wide. "Zara Hayes, will you marry me?" Griffin pulled out a ring, simple and beautiful. Will you let me spend the rest of my life making up for lost time? Will you let me be your husband, their father, and the luckiest man alive? And Caleb and Sierra? He turned to them. Will you let me officially be your dad? Not just in practice, but legally, with all the rights and responsibilities that come with it. I want to adopt you if you'll have me. Sierra burst into tears. Yes. Obviously, yes. Obviously, Caleb echoed, his own voice shaky. Griffin looked back at Zara, waiting, hopeful, terrified. Yes, she said, laughing through her own tears. Yes to all of it. The wedding was 6 months later, small and perfect, in the backyard of their house with lights strung through the trees. Caleb and Sierra stood with them, part of the ceremony, as Griffin promised to love not just Zara but all of them. To be the father he should have been from the start. To never take for granted the second chance he'd been given. And when they said "I do," when they kissed as a family watched and cheered, when the twins tackled them both in a group hug that nearly knocked them over, Griffin realized something. He'd spent 34 years of his life chasing success, building an empire, accumulating wealth and status, and all the things that were supposed to matter. But none of it, not a single dollar or achievement or accolade, compared to this, to being chosen, to being forgiven, to being loved despite his failures, to having a family. Years later, when people asked how they made it work, how they rebuilt trust after such a devastating betrayal, Zara would smile and say it wasn't easy. That forgiveness was a choice you made every day, not a one-time decision. That Griffin had spent years proving himself, showing up, being consistent, earning back what he'd thrown away. That love wasn't enough without respect, communication, and the willingness to be vulnerable. But mostly, she'd say it worked because they both chose it. Every single day, they chose each other, chose their family, chose to believe that people can change if they want it badly enough. And Griffin, holding his wife's hand with their teenagers now, teenagers who called him dad without hesitation, who never doubted they were wanted, who knew what it meant to be truly loved, would add that sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the most important lessons. That running from love out of fear is easy, but staying and fighting for it is what makes you human. That he'd wasted 11 years being a coward, but he refused to waste another day. And on quiet nights, when it was just the two of them, Zara curled against his chest, Griffin would whisper thank you, for giving him a second chance, for raising two incredible humans alone, for being strong enough for both of them when he wasn't, for teaching him what real love looked like. And she'd whisper back that she was glad the twins knocked on his door that day, that they forced the confrontation neither of them would have chosen, that they were brave enough to want what she'd been too hurt to ask for. Because in the end, it took two fearless 11-year-olds to show two grown adults that some things are worth fighting for. That family isn't just biology or convenience. It's choice and commitment and showing up even when it's hard. That love, real love, the kind that lasts, is built not in the easy moments but in the struggle to become better versions of yourself for the people you love. And as they drifted off to sleep in the home they'd built together, surrounded by the sounds of their children's breathing down the hall, both of them knew they'd do it all over again. The pain, the separation, the hard work of rebuilding, because it led them here, to this moment, to this family, to this life, together.